I worked with my hands for 40 years. Electrical contracting. I built my company from a single white van and a tool belt that belonged to my own father, and I turned it into something that employed 31 people at its peak. I am not a man who went to college. I am not a man who owns a second home in the Hamptons or plays golf on Saturdays at a private club. I drink my coffee black. I wear the same brand of boots I wore in my 30s, and I have never once in my life been embarrassed by what I do or where I come from. My son knows all of this. He grew up watching me leave the house before sunrise and come home after dark with grease under my fingernails and sawdust in my hair. He watched me coach his Little League team on 3 hours of sleep. He watched me sit at the kitchen table every Sunday paying bills, moving money carefully from one column to another, making sure there was always enough. He never wanted for anything. Not once. I want to make sure that part is clear before I tell you the rest of this story, because what happened over the last year and a half is the kind of thing that, when you hear it from the outside, makes you wonder what kind of father the man must have been. I want you to know exactly what kind of father I was. And then I want you to hear what my son did. And then I want you to hear what I did in return. My son is 34 years old. His name is Marcus. He is tall and lean the way I was at his age. And he got his mother's eyes, dark brown and quick. She passed when he was 19, a stroke that came out of nowhere one April morning while she was getting ready for work. I raised him alone from that point forward. I was 41 years old with a grieving teenager and a business to run, and I did it. I am not looking for applause. I am just telling you the truth. Marcus did well for himself. He went into finance, works for an investment firm in Manhattan. I do not pretend to fully understand what he does, but I know he wears good suits and lives in a building with a doorman, and I know that I helped pay for his graduate degree because he asked me to, and I said yes without hesitating. $82,000. I did not keep the receipt, but that number is sitting in my chest the way certain numbers tend to sit. He met Sophia about 3 years ago. I will be honest. I liked her at first. She is beautiful in that way that makes a room go quiet, dark hair, sharp cheekbones, a smile that knows exactly what it is doing. Her family is from Rome. Her father, Eduardo, is supposedly some kind of real estate developer over there. Old money crossed with new connections. The kind of man who name drops people you have never heard of and expects you to be impressed. Her mother, Claudia, is the sort of woman who looks at your shoes before she looks at your face. I noticed that the first time we met. I filed it away and said nothing. They got engaged 18 months ago. I took Marcus to dinner, just the two of us, the night after he proposed to her, and I told him I was happy for him. I told him Sophia seemed like a strong woman. I told him his mother would have cried the good kind of tears. And then I asked him what he needed from me, because that is who I am. That has always been who I am. What he needed, it turned out, was a great deal. The wedding was going to be in Rome. Sophia's family had apparently already decided this before the ring was even purchased. It would be held at a private villa outside the city, a property that her family had a long-standing relationship with, a venue that required a minimum booking of $110,000 before a single flower was ordered or a single bottle of wine was opened. There would be a guest list of 240 people. There would be a 5-course dinner, a live orchestra, a fireworks display over the hillside at midnight. Marcus presented this to me over steak in a restaurant I will not be able to afford again for a while. He laid it out carefully, the way he must lay things out in his office for clients. He had a figure. The total came to $185,000. He told me Sophia's family would be contributing as well. He was not specific about how much. He said it would be a family effort. He said the word family with a kind of weight that I understood immediately was directed at me. I want to pause here and say something because I know what you are already thinking. You are thinking what one of the most liked comments on a video, very much like this story once said. If her family is so wealthy, why aren't they paying for it? I thought the same thing. I asked Marcus directly. He got a look on his face that I had seen before. The look he gets when he does not want to answer a question, but also does not want to lie to me directly. He said Eduardo had assets that were not currently liquid. He said Sophia's family would be handling certain costs on their end, the flowers, the rehearsal dinner. He said it would all even out. I made him look me in the eye and tell me the number Sophia's family was putting in. He said 60,000. I said I would put in the rest. $125,000. I had it. I had been building a retirement account for 20 years, and it would hurt to pull from it. But Marcus was my only child, and I had told myself 1,000 times that whatever he needed for his wedding, I would find a way. So I said yes. What I did not say yes to was what came next. 6 months before the wedding, Marcus called me on a Tuesday evening. He sounded the way he used to sound as a teenager when he had done something he knew was wrong and was trying to figure out how to position it. He talked about the weather for 2 minutes. He asked about my foreman, Danny, who he has known since he was 12. He asked about my knee, which I had surgery on the previous spring. Then he told me he needed to talk to me about the guest list. Sophia's family, he said, had some concerns. The villa was formal. The ceremony would be conducted in Italian and English. But the reception, the toasts, the atmosphere, it was going to be a certain kind of evening. Edoardo and Claudia had guests coming from Milan, from Florence, from Geneva, business associates, old family, friends, people who moved in a specific world. I asked him to say what he was actually trying to say. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Dad, Sophia's family is worried that you might be uncomfortable." I said, "I have been uncomfortable before. I will survive." He said, "That's not exactly what I mean." I asked him again to say what he meant. He said that Edoardo and Claudia felt that the cultural gap might create a difficult dynamic. He said they were concerned about the impression that would be made on their guests. He said the word optics. He actually said the word optics to me, his father, about his own wedding. I asked him plainly, "Are you telling me not to come?" He didn't answer immediately. That silence was its own answer. He said it wasn't that he didn't want me there. He said it was complicated. He said that Sophia was under a lot of pressure from her family and that he was trying to keep the peace, and that maybe I could come to a smaller celebration back home afterward, something more comfortable for everyone. I said, "Marcus, I am paying $125,000 for this wedding." He said he knew that. He said he appreciated it more than he could say. He said he hoped I understood. I said I needed a few days to think. I did not need a few days to think. I knew in that moment, on that Tuesday evening, standing in my kitchen with the phone pressed to my ear, exactly what I was going to do. But I am 63 years old, and I have learned that decisions made in the heat of the first moment sometimes need to be confirmed in the quiet of the second and third moment. So, I waited. I slept on it. I slept on it for 4 nights, and each morning I woke up, and the answer was the same. On the 5th day, I called my attorney, a woman named Patricia, who has handled my business contracts for 15 years and who I trust completely. I told her I needed to understand the payment structure I had set up with the wedding vendors. I had been making deposits directly to the villa, to a catering coordinator, to a florist in Rome that Sophia had selected, to a travel agency handling room blocks for American guests. I asked Patricia what my options were. She told me. Then I called my bank. Over the course of 3 days, I made phone calls and sent emails, and had 2 video calls with people in Italy whose English was better than they let on. I canceled the catering deposit. I withdrew the villa payment, which was still within the cancellation window, by 11 days. 11 days. I want you to feel how close that was. I contacted the travel agency and released the room block. I sent a formal written notice to the florist that my portion of the floral order, which was $38,000, because apparently that is what flowers cost when you are trying to impress people from Geneva, would not be funded. I want you to understand the totality of what I pulled back. $125,000. Not a metaphor, not an exaggeration. $125,000 that I had spent 30 years earning with my hands, that I had agreed to give freely because I loved my son, that I removed from the equation in 72 hours because I was told my presence at the event would be an inconvenience. When the last confirmation email came through on a Thursday afternoon, I closed my laptop, put on my jacket, and drove to a diner I have been going to for 20 years. I ordered the meatloaf. I ate it slowly. I did not feel rage. I did not feel satisfaction exactly. Not yet. I felt something more like clarity. The particular stillness that comes when you have done the hard thing and you know it was right. I turned my phone on silent and slipped it into my jacket pocket. Friday morning, I woke up at 5:15 the way I have woken up every weekday morning for 4 decades. I made coffee. I sat at the kitchen table. After a while, I picked up my phone to check the weather. 31 missed calls, 17 text messages, 4 voicemails. I sat there with the phone in my hand, and I read the timestamps. The calls had started at 11:47 the previous night. They ran through midnight, through 1 in the morning, through 2. There was a gap between 2 and 4, and then they started again. Marcus, Sophia's number, which I had in my contacts but which had never called me before that night. A number I did not recognize with a Rome area code that I later confirmed was Eduardo. I read the texts first. I will not repeat all of them, but I will tell you that the early ones from Marcus were confused, asking me to call him, saying there must be a mistake, saying the villa had called him about a cancellation. The later ones, the ones from after midnight, were different. They were not confused. They were not polite. There was one from Sophia that said my actions were cruel and vindictive and that I was trying to destroy her relationship with Marcus. There was one from Marcus, sent at 2:17 in the morning, that said if I did not reverse the cancellations by 9 a.m., I could consider our relationship finished. I put the phone down and drank my coffee. At 9:03, I called Marcus. He picked up on the first ring. He was not the version of my son I had raised. He was someone I recognized, but did not know. Tight and sharp, and reciting things that did not sound like his own words. He said I had humiliated Sophia in front of her family. He said I had made it impossible for him to function in his relationship. He said the villa was threatening to keep a portion of the deposit that had already been paid by Sophia's family, and that I was responsible for that loss. I said, Marcus, you told me not to come to your wedding. He said, Dad, that's not what I said. You told me I would create a difficult dynamic. You said optics. You said your future in-laws were concerned about the impression I would make. You used those words. He was quiet. I said, You have my phone number. I am going to finish my coffee now. I hung up. What happened next is the part of this story that I want you to hold on to, because it is the part that explains everything that came before it, and it is the part that changed what I understood to be true about the situation my son had gotten himself into. 4 days after the calls, I received a message from a woman who did not introduce herself by name, but who turned out to be the adult daughter of one of Eduardo's former business partners in Milan. I will not explain how she found my contact information because, honestly, I am still not entirely sure. What she told me, in 3 careful paragraphs of very precise English, was this. Eduardo's real estate development business had been in serious financial distress for almost 2 years. There were creditors. There were legal proceedings in Italy that had been ongoing since the previous spring. The $60,000 that Sophia's family had pledged to Marcus for the wedding did not exist in any account that could produce it. The plan, as this woman understood it from what she had heard through people who knew the family, was that Eduardo and Claudia had been counting on my contribution to float the majority of the event while their pledge remained a number on paper. I read that message 3 times. Then I sat very still for a long while. My son had not known this. I want to be fair to Marcus, and I want to be clear. I do not believe he knew. I believe he was a 34-year-old man in love with a beautiful woman, trying to make her happy, trying to fit himself into her world, slowly losing track of which things were true and which things he had been told to believe. I know what that looks like. I was young once. I know how the current of someone else's reality can pull you away from your own without you noticing until you are very far from shore. That does not excuse what he said to me. It explains it, but it does not excuse it. I forwarded the message to Patricia. She did some checking through contacts she has. The picture that came back confirmed everything the woman in Milan had told me. Eduardo's company had liabilities that made the $60,000 wedding pledge look almost funny. The villa, the florist, the caterer, my money was not supplementing the wedding. My money was the wedding. Sophia's family was going to stand at the altar of a $185,000 celebration, funded almost entirely by a man they had decided was too unsophisticated to be seen in the photographs. 2 weeks after the phone calls, Marcus came to see me. He drove up on a Sunday afternoon and sat across from me at the same kitchen table where I used to help him with his homework, where we ate 10,000 dinners together after his mother died, where I handed him his college acceptance letter and watched his face do something I will never forget. He looked like he had not slept in a long time. He looked like someone had taken something out of him and replaced it with something heavier. He said, "I know what you found out." I said, "Tell me what happened." He said Sophia had told him, finally, after the cancellations, about her family's situation. He said Eduardo had assured her that the money would materialize, that he had a deal closing, that it was just a matter of timing. He said Sophia had believed her father. He said he had believed Sophia. He said he was sorry. I want to tell you that I said something wise and clean in that moment, the kind of line that wraps a story up neatly. But that is not what happened. What happened is that I looked at my son for a long time without saying anything, and he let me look at him, and he did not look away. And then I asked him 2 questions. The first question was, when Sophia's family asked you to tell me not to come, did you agree with them? Did any part of you think they were right? He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I didn't think they were right. I thought I could keep everyone happy if I just managed it carefully enough. I thought if I got through the wedding, everything would settle. I told myself the feelings would pass. I said, whose feelings? He said, mine, the ones about how wrong it was. The second question I asked was, if I had come to you before any of this, before Sophia, before the ring, and I had told you that one day someone might ask you to exclude your father from a room because of how he looked or where he came from, what would you have said to them? He said, I would have told them to go to hell. I said, I know you would have. That's the son I raised. We sat there for a while longer. He told me the wedding was off, not postponed, off. He and Sophia had been having the kinds of conversations that do not come back from easily. He did not know where things were going. He sounded hollowed out when he talked about it. And I did not pile on. That was not a moment for I told you so. That was a moment for just being his father, which I have been doing for 34 years and intend to keep doing. I told him I would support him through whatever came next. I told him my door was what it had always been, open. I told him there were 2 conditions on my end, and I wanted him to hear them clearly. The first condition was this: never again. Not with Sophia if they found their way back. Not with anyone else. The man who raised you, the man who sat in the bleachers at every game, who drove you to the ER at 3 a.m. when you broke your wrist in 9th grade, who handed a check to the graduate school without a single complaint that man does not get managed. He does not get handled. He does not get kept out of rooms because someone is worried about optics. The second condition was simpler. I told him to stop trying to become someone else entirely when he walked into Sophia's world. I told him the version of himself that he had been slowly quieting down, the one who knew it was wrong, the one who would have told them to go to hell. That version was the one worth keeping. He nodded. He looked like he was going to say something several times and stopped. Finally, he said, I don't know how you're this calm. I said, I'm not calm. I'm 63. There's a difference. He actually laughed. It was the first time I had heard him laugh in what felt like a very long time. And it sounded like him, the real him, the one I had been missing since somewhere around the time a woman with sharp cheekbones and a smile that knew what it was doing first walked into his life. We ate dinner together that night. I made the same thing I used to make on Sunday nights when he was growing up, pasta with meat sauce from a recipe that belonged to his mother. We did not talk about the wedding, or the money, or Sophia's father's balance sheets. We talked about the old things. We talked about Danny and the business. We talked about a trip Marcus wanted to take. Somewhere in the Pacific Northwest, hiking country, the kind of landscape that clears your head. I told him I might come along if my knee held up. He stayed until 9. When he left, he hugged me in the doorway the way he used to when he was small. Both arms, no hesitation. The kind of hug that means something. I stood in the doorway for a moment after his car pulled away. The neighborhood was quiet. The lights were on in the house across the street. Someone was grilling somewhere nearby. I could smell it in the October air, and it was a good smell, simple and familiar, the kind of thing that costs nothing. I went inside and washed the dishes. I put the leftover pasta in a container and stuck it in the fridge. I turned off the kitchen light and walked down the hall, and I thought, not for the first time in my life, about what it actually means to be a father. It does not mean writing checks. It does not mean saying yes to everything. It does not mean swallowing yourself down until you are invisible so that someone else can be comfortable. It means showing up. It means holding the line when the line matters. It means loving someone enough to let them feel the full weight of the thing they did wrong, and then loving them enough to still be standing there when they turn around. $125,000 is not nothing. I want to be honest about that. I will be working a few years longer than I planned. I am not angry about it, but I am not going to pretend it is not real. What I pulled back, I kept. What I protected was more than money. The villa in Italy will have a different wedding in it next summer. Some other family will stand on that hillside and watch the fireworks over Rome and think they are at the center of something magical. And maybe they will be. I have no quarrel with any of that. What I know is that my son ate dinner at my kitchen table on a Sunday night in October and laughed like himself. And when he left, he held on for a moment in the doorway like he meant it. I know that I went to bed that night and slept the way you sleep, when you have not done a single thing you are ashamed of. I am not a fancy man. I never have been. But I know the difference between a room I am welcome in and a room where someone is just waiting to use me. I spent 40 years learning to tell the difference between a solid wall and a false one. That skill does not stay in the truck when you go home for the night. My name is in the concrete of buildings that will stand for 100 years in this city. My son knows how to find me. That is enough. That has always been enough.